Let's talk about Bo Lucy. Do you remember back in the summer, there's a poor little cow broke out of a farm in the suburbs to the west of London, a place called Staines, near Surrey. I grew up near there. You might be totally uninterested to know. So I know the area. It's very residential, very sort of middle class. Anyway, there you can see, remember the cow. It's not a massive cow. And there goes the police car. Look at that. Look at that. Drove into that cow. Poor little thing goes round and round and round, ends up rammed up under that car, ended up with a great gash in its leg, a few other superficial injuries. Fortunately, thank God, no worse than that. And now I think is doing quite well, recovering well. But it has now been decided that the officer who did that, who drove the car at that poor little cow, acted lawfully and necessarily, that it was necessary and lawful what he did. Now, I don't think he should have his career ruined or anything like that. In fact, I'm not quite sure why he had to be off to work for 6 months while this was investigated. You know, I think he made a wrong decision in the heat of the moment, but it was obviously a situation that demanded some kind of decision. But what alarms me, or what concerns me, is the conclusion that what happened there, that a poor little cow getting rammed at high speed by a police car, was lawful and necessary. Maybe lawful, I don't know, but certainly I would argue not necessary. Let's talk to animal welfare campaigner Dominic Dyer. Hello, Dom.
Hello, Kevin. Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure, mate. Yeah, I mean, do you agree with me? I mean, I don't know whether this is lawful or not, but I cannot for the life of me see that it was necessary to drive a police car at high speed at a poor little cow that happened to have broken out from a farm. I don't mind if you want to say it's lawful. I suppose that in the great scheme of things it could be lawful, but it wasn't necessary, was it?
No, it wasn't. And, you know, I remember saying at the time, and this caused a huge stir, remember, in the political election campaign, I think it sort of took the headlines away, you know, from Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak for about 24, 48 hours. Everyone talked in the nation about what they'd seen on these videos. And it was horrendous. You know, I thought this was one of the cruelest incidents I'd seen in terms of policing and dealing with a potential problem for public safety. But, you know, the officers in that vehicle, that four-wheel drive heavyweight vehicle, were trying to kill that animal. They weren't trying to subdue it and control it, in my view. Now, that is fundamentally wrong, and that's down to a lack of training, a lack of awareness about the suffering it would be causing to that animal. And I think this is a wider problem, not just for Surrey Police, but for the Metropolitan Police. You remember about 18 months ago, we had those two bull terriers killed at Limehouse. There's an independent Office of Police Commission investigation into that, because, again, that went viral around the world, those two dogs being shot in the most horrible circumstances. So I think what we have is a problem in the police. And I don't blame individual officers, Kevin, because they're in difficult situations having to deal with problems like this. But where are they getting their training? Where are they getting their advice from? In a situation like this, a vet should have been called, a farmer should have been called, because they'll know how to deal with an animal like this. Not ramming it with a four-wheel drive vehicle in this way. So I think you're right. I don't think the police officers should have been suspended for a long period of time. My God, we don't have enough police officers on the streets. We need more of them, not less of them. But I think there needs to be a proper investigation and a recognition at a senior level within the force that actually we have a problem here. You know, I'm going to be speaking at a rural crime and wildlife crime police leaders conference on Thursday, you know, chairing a debate with officers and a big audience of police officers on these types of issues. And I'm going to raise this because I think actually this does an awful lot of damage to the reputation of the police. And there are many officers in the police that are doing some really good work on wildlife and rural crime and really care about this stuff and don't want to see this happening. So I think we've got to really deal with it.
Yeah, my feeling is that they should have decided, the authorities should have decided this action was not necessary, but also that it was certainly not necessary to punish that officer. I'm not quite sure why he had to be off duty for 6 months. I think that's ridiculous. He made a decision in a split second, in a moment, and I think he made the wrong decision. We're all capable of that. Yep. And I think that's fair enough. What we need, though, Dom, now is protocol. We need, and I think that every police force, every region in future should have on call a vet. who, you know, is licensed to fire a dart or something like that. And by the way, so that should, going forward, there should always be a vet available to handle this kind of situation. But I would say one other thing. I mean, I know cows are not the biggest or the smallest animals around, and when they're charging around, I suppose they can be fairly alarming. But that was quite a small cow. I think it wasn't much more than a calf. It's a lady cow, Lucy. I mean, is a cow that terrifying that you have to lock yourself in a car and drive at it at full pace? No. I would have gone.
And that just comes down to lack of training and awareness of the officers concerned. They're under pressure to deal with it. And it was similar with the Limehouse situation with the dogs being shot. Again, the officers were under great pressure to do something. And they thought, well, my job is to protect the public. In this instance, you know, that calf could have been dangerous. It could have got onto a motorway or a dual carriageway. That would have been extremely dangerous, of course. So we've got to somehow, you know, stop that animal getting in a situation where it's going to endanger people and, you know, endanger itself. So they do have to do something. But I think in this instance, they weren't trained, they weren't aware. You're absolutely right. I think in both these situations, with this calf and with the two dogs at Limehouse, if a vet had been available to intervene and advise the officers, they would have avoided what happened. I don't think there was any reason for the two dogs to be shot dead, and I don't think there was any reason to ram this calf. And the Metropolitan Police in one case, the Surrey Police in another, and I could give you other incidents. There was a case of, I think, a deer being shot up in Lancashire some time ago, you know, that got onto the streets, and I remember speaking on this and other stations about. So these problems occur, but we need a better situation in terms of training and awareness. We need to be able to bring farmers into the situation if it's a farm animal, and bring vets into the situation if they need to advise officers on how best to deal with the problem. This is not good for the reputation of the police. It's not good for the individual officers that put in an impossible position. And obviously, we want to avoid the suffering to the animals as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's we can agree that the police need to raise their game on this. They need to get a protocol in place, perhaps have at least one officer, you know, who's regarded as the station's animal expert, certainly a vet on hand and on call who's licensed to fire darts. And I think they are already talking to the emergency services like the fire service to improve their reactions in the future. But I don't think that they should have concluded that driving at that poor little animal at full speed was, you can say it's lawful, I'm sure it's lawful, but it wasn't necessary, was it, though?
It wasn't. And I think the final point I'll make is policing is a difficult job, but they do come into contact with animals regularly. There are lots of dangerous dogs out there, some of which are used by criminal gangs, we know, to do certain things. So that's a real dangerous situation, and many people get killed, so that's a real problem the police have to deal with. You know, we have a lot of exotic pets in people's homes and backyards. You know, we even have big cats, you know, in people's backyards and things where we have real potential danger if they break out. So the police have to be prepared for this. It's not just cattle, it's not just dogs, potentially wild animals too on the loose. And they do have to protect the public. So we need more training, more awareness, and a higher priority given to animal welfare as well as public safety.